In this lesson, we are going to be learning how to create clay coils to make a coil pot. So the first thing that you're going to need beyond your sketch, and you'll be working on that at the end of this lesson, but when you come in to build, you're going to first get out a paper towel. You'll then come up and you'll get a slab of clay that looks like this, and I will also give you kind of this rectangular form of clay. This is what we're going to be using to make our coils. Now the important part with making coils is making sure that we are working with the clay and we're rolling the clay all the way around, so 360 degrees. But before we do that, notice that we have these edges here. We need to get rid of these sharp edges because it'll make it easier to roll the coil. So we're thinking about kind of like rolling a big snake. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of turn the clay, round it out so that I kind of have a snake here. And notice how those edges are gone. Okay, they're not as sharp anymore. Now, with your clay, keeping my fingers together when the clay is small, I'm going to roll the clay from fingertip to the base of my palm and back again. It's important we put a little bit of pressure on the clay so that we're going to stretch the clay out. We don't want a lot of pressure, just a tiny bit. And we want to keep the pressure consistent. So you're going to see that I'm rolling the clay, and when I roll the clay, I'm rolling the clay so it's turning 360 degrees. And notice how my fingers are getting wider as the clay is getting longer. Now the important part with this is making sure that when you are rolling the clay, that your clay is all rolling together. So we don't want to have parts where the clay is rolling on this side but not rolling over here. So everything needs to move together. Now one thing I want you to notice, do you see these wet marks here? That's moisture that is being taken away from the clay. Your body is also taking moisture away from the clay. Your body temperature is about 98.7, give or take a couple degrees depending on your temperature, but your body is warm. So the more you play with the clay, the more moisture you're taking away from the clay. So if you work with the clay too long, the clay is going to dry out faster. So you want these to be fairly quick when you're doing this. So I'm just going to quickly roll out the clay. Now when you're rolling the clay out, again, keeping consistent, you may not be able to roll such a long coil, and that's okay. If you need to break your clay apart, you certainly can and roll a smaller section. What I want you to notice is I'm not making this coil very thin. I'm keeping the coil thick. Think about a thick jump rope. The thicker you keep your coil, the faster your clay coil pot is going to build up, and the less likelihood that it's going to break or dry out on you. If you take a piece of coil, and I'll just show you a difference here. If you take a piece of coil, and I've seen this happen, I'm going to roll this coil out. Notice I'm going all the way back front, making sure my coil is being consistent in the roll. I have seen students who have rolled coils that are very skinny and thin. This takes a long time to build up. It's harder to attach your coils, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and it dries out much faster. So you really want to keep your coils thick like that. So I'm going to put this away. Maybe I can use this in part of my design later on. We'll see. Now that you have your thick rope-like coil rolled out, your next step is going to be to get your base, which by the way should always stay on your paper towel. If you put this base and you try building it on the table, the clay will stick to the table, and then it's possible you could ruin it when you're trying to take it off the table. So keep it on the paper towel. The first thing I'm going to do is take this coil and I'm going to place the coil on my base. Now notice, I can still see the edge of this square. So I want to make sure this is sitting on top and not off like that. So we want to make sure we're sitting on top and that we can see this edge. I'm going to make a ramp to one side, just kind of pressing that clay down, and I'm going to make this round because I want my coil pot to be kind of round. Makes it a little bit easier. Notice I'm staying on the base. I'm making sure that my coil is not going off the base, and when I come to the ramp, I'm just going to keep going up the ramp and building around. One coil on top, directly on top of another. When I get to the end of that coil, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make another ramp. Notice I'm supporting the coil as I go. Now the next step is going to be to go into your clay tool bin and find a plastic knife. You're going to use the plastic knife to cut away these corners. And this clay can be used in part of your design, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm cutting away those corners and setting that clay aside. Now, this is very good. So I want to take a look at this. Notice my coils are sitting directly on top of my base. They're one on top of one another. When we're building a coil pot, our design's going to be on the outside, but we need the inside to be nice and smooth. So I want you to watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to support this outside wall, and at the same time that I'm kind of pressing this outside wall, I'm going to take my thumb, I'm going to grab a little bit of clay here, and I'm going to press the clay down and over onto the next coil and onto the floor. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around. Now I'm holding the clay up. I would keep your clay on your paper towel. In fact, I'm going to do that because it's just a lot easier, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So the pressure that I'm using with my thumb on the inside, I'm making sure that I have the same pressure on the outside, because if I don't, then these walls will continue to expand, and then these walls will end up becoming the floor. I've seen it happen many, many times. So make sure you are supporting that outside wall. Once you go from top to bottom all the way around, then you can go side to side. So you notice I went top to bottom first, then I can go side to side so I can smooth out the clay. So when you see this, when you pick it up, now you can't see the coils on the inside anymore. Oh, but you can see I missed something there, so I need to go back, smooth that out. It's really important that you do this as you go, because the higher up you build, are you going to be able to reach inside way down the bottom to be able to smooth those coils out? The answer is no. So you need to make sure that you smooth the inside every time you add a new layer. Your design needs to have at least 2 layers of coil, straight coil, before you begin your designs. Now let me show you, which I have 2 layers there, and I'm going to show you some designs that you can do with clay, that you can work with your coil. So the first thing I need to do is roll